What's up, guys? Welcome back to Keeping Up with the X-Men. I am here to continue talking about the Phoenix Resurrection and a small thing to correct myself on. When we left the last video, I said that you are now all caught up with Jean Grey Resurrection. It's Phoenix Resurrection. Not that's a big deal, but I figured I'd correct myself. I kind of get going, and I like the idea of not having any of these things scripted. I read it, and then I come in here and I give as quick opinions as I possibly can to the idea of what I read. I don't like my ideas to die on me or be any kind of scripted. I like to just kind of do this. So sometimes you will catch me in things like that where I can't quite remember something when I need to or something of that nature, and I'll try to correct myself when I can. This book starts us off with Jean Grey crashing into the Jamaica Bay. So she's piloting this shuttle, she crashes into the Jamaica Bay, and then she wakes up and she's on the ground because when she crashes, all this water pours in, she starts drowning in the shuttle, and then she wakes up and she's on the floor of a grocery store, and she's like, oh my God, what happened? And she's covered in water, she's drenched from head to toe, and they're like, oh, this rack fell over and all these bottles and everything, and she's like, oh my God. And she gets up, they're telling her, hey, we called an ambulance, and she starts getting up, and then we cut to the Jamaica Bay in New York where all the fish are dying. There's like this son and this guy, and they're out there fishing, and then all of a sudden a giant firebird of death and destruction comes like big explosions happen. All these fish die, and there's an explosion in Jamaica Bay, and the guy is like, oh shit, and he jumps out. And he's trying to swim away with his kid and everything. And his kid is like, I don't like fishing anymore. And he's like, you know what? Neither do I. This is a hobby that we're going to drop right here and right now. Jean runs out of the store. And she's freaking out. She's trying to start the car. She's in mass distress. She is losing it. She doesn't like the fact that her world seems to be falling apart. That the life that she's lived up till now, she's having like these nightmares and everything, and then she can't explain what's going on. Now she loses consciousness, and people that she doesn't know are showing up randomly, and she feels like she's connected, but she doesn't. Her life is falling apart. She really feels like that. Now we go back to Kitty and the X-Men as they were going to check on a hunch. This is at the Cochrane Hill Cemetery, upstate New York, and sure enough, they get to the grave of Jean Grey, and they open it up, and she's not in there. Her body is not in there. And all of them are like, well, crap. We know what that means. They know. They have to know. Either two things is going on now. One, creepy grave robbing problem, or Jean Grey is back. And if Jean Grey is just back, which her casket is there. They didn't dig it up or anything like that. It's right there. It's open. It's right there on the cemetery lot. It's open. And we cut back to Jean Grey, and there's something kind of weird going on, which is kind of what I was talking about. I don't know if she's creating memories and bringing people back for small periods, or if this is some sort of weird hallucination that she's going through as she comes back to life. But like, we cut to this, and we got Patch working on her car that didn't start. Patch is just working on her car. That's not Patch. There's no way. There's no way. Now, it would have been a crazy coincidence if she would have really went to a car garage and found Wolverine, because Wolverine is back. But that's not what's going on here. And then he like hits on her. He starts telling her, you need to calm down. Your life isn't falling apart. Because she's like, just great. It's going to cost me so much money and everything. And he's like, look, you either need to find a stiff drink or a stiff man, and I can help with one of those or both of them. And she's like, ah! And she tells him, stop being a fucking pig, dude. Sorry. Man, I don't know what's going on. So she throws him across, and he falls into this. And he falls into his tool rack and everything. And he's like, oh my God, what is your problem? And she's like, I'm so sorry. And he's like, you can't take credit for no earthquake. And she's like, that wasn't no earthquake. And she's kind of confused by it. And he's just trying to, like, it's a weird situation in general, because that can't be Patch. So there's something crazy going on where she's like, she's like creating things around her that coexist in her memories as she's coming back to life, as her memories are resurfacing or something. I don't know. This is wild. And then we cut to the X-Men at a hotel in London, and Kitty and the X-Men are currently talking to the White Queen. And Emma tells them, yeah, I know Jean is back. And they're like, well, how do you know? And she's like, because I just ran all over Canada with the younger Jean and the older Jean. And I know she's back. And they're like, well, then we need to find her. And she's like, I know where she is too. And Emma gives us an interesting insight at this point. She tells us that all those years that she was with Scott, sometimes they would be intimate. And every now and then, his mind would kind of leave where they were. And he would go back to Jean. And he would think about a place that they used to go. A place that was important to the two of them. And she says, I never held that against him. Being psychic, I know that minds wander. Did it hurt from time to time that he did something like that? Yeah. But I understood it. And this also says something to Emma's character that we never really give her credit for, is that she does have some empathy. She does understand that Jean Grey was a very important part of Scott's life, and she had to accept that to be with Scott. She truly and legitimately loved Scott. They were together. And Emma, that was a happy moment in her life. And even though every now and then she still had to play backseat to Jean Grey, she understood why. She knew where that was coming from because she'd been a part of this kind of stuff her whole life. She'd always seen this kind of stuff throughout the course of her life. I mean, can you imagine what it's like to be able to see inside people's heads, to know when they're with you and they're not with you, even if it's just for a second? You see it, you know it, you feel it, you experience it. You know that you were not the one they were thinking about. You know when they're mad and they're just passing it off like, no, I'm not worried about it, don't even worry about it. You know when they're panicked, you know when they're sad, you know when they're lying about something to try to protect you in terms of, I don't want this person worrying. Like, can you imagine if you were a kid or something in that situation, and you know, even as a child, you're like, my parents are having money problems. Like, these are legitimate money problems. And I can see that my parents are basically drowning here. And your parents are like, you are over-exaggerating. It's not a big deal, blah, blah, blah. It is a big deal. And it is scary. And sometimes we don't have the money to fix the car. Sometimes we don't have enough money to fix the house. Sometimes we don't have enough money to get the new mower or something of that sort. And we got to do the overtime, or we got to do what we can do and sell what we can sell and manage what we can manage to get our lives back on track. But you don't want everybody around you knowing that. But she would know it. Jean would know it. Hope would know it. This is kind of scary stuff. To think that people like Rachel grew up, well, Rachel's a little bit of a different story, but these people would grow up in this kind of situation where you can't hide that kind of stuff from them, and they would worry with you. And if not, for that matter, it's scary to think that we've all been there. We've all been with one person and then thought of another. Or something of that sort, where you are where you want to be. Don't misunderstand me, but thought is random. Thought is weird. One weird off-the-wall thing can trigger an entire set of emotions and memories that you would have never considered. And it's weird how that happens, that sometimes you can fall back to an old girlfriend, to an old friend, to an old song, to an old moment in your life, and it doesn't matter how serious or how in the moment you are there where you are, whatever you're doing, that your mind can take you back here. And maybe at that exact same time, maybe you are intimate with Emma. And Emma senses it. For a second, you're not with her. That's got to be excruciating, and nobody ever gives it any thought. Emma has her flaws. But that says a lot, that she knew that kind of stuff was happening, where Scott would often drift away back to Jean. and she let it go. She understood it. That's an interesting character piece that changes some of the aspects that we think about Emma. Does Emma still have her problems? Of course. But let us also be honest in the aspect that Jean Grey also has her problems. And we will, of course, discuss them as they come up throughout the course of me doing this show. I'm sure of it. Anyhow, Jean runs to this house, goes inside the house, closes the door, locks it, the house catches on fire, and she's just sitting there, she's screaming, and she's like, please just leave me alone, leave me alone, leave me alone. And we see this. The end of the book is our Phoenix. My favorite moment in X-Men Jean Grey history is her. I love her. I love her design. I love her costume. I love the power. I love what she was. She is the single moment that makes me a Jean Grey fan forever. I don't care how overrated it is. I love Jean Grey, and that is something I've been waiting for a long time. Now, I've seen the X-Men Red book cover, and I don't quite love that costume at all. Not a fan. Like, in the least. I don't like that thing. It looks like a variant of the 90s costume, and I wasn't a fan of the 90s costume either. I would have loved for Jean Grey to have come back and kept that Phoenix costume. But I'm not going to get that. At the exact same time, the X-Men, a good portion of X-Men land in New Mexico. They're supposed to be checking something out. And this is the area that Emma said, if Jean Grey is anywhere, check this place. That's where she'll be. They go there. They find this giant, like, there's nothing there at first. And then Magic is like, hold on a minute, there is something here. And she takes out that big, crazy, awesome soul sword, and she's like, bam! And she cuts into something, and the last thing that we get to see is this giant bat. I don't know what it is. And to be fair, they don't know what it is either. They're like, oh, well, that's ominous. And then he's like, oh, yeah, well, we're going in it. And then they end the book. I don't know what happens after this point. I have no real speculation except for maybe the young Jean Grey, when she was burnt up by the Phoenix, maybe that became the Jean Grey that's running around. And then the Phoenix was what resurrected from the casket. And maybe, just maybe, kind of like a Superman Red and Blue, maybe we're going to put the two together. And maybe that's something that's going to happen with all the X-Men, where the two Icemen kind of go back into being one person or something. I don't know. We could go anywhere. Let's be honest, comic books. I could speculate all day and all night, or I can look forward to the next issue. And I think that's what I'm going to do here. I'm going to kind of let my mind ease, and I'm going to wait to see where this goes. Because quite honestly, it's got me this time. It really does. And you know what? Maybe that's because I'm letting it. Maybe it's not so much that I can't really piece it together or see exactly where it's going. Maybe I'm choosing not to. And that could very well be true, because honestly, I just want Jean Grey back, and I want the story to be good, and I don't want to second guess every single thing that the writers and team do. I just kind of want to enjoy where it's taken me, and when I find something like the Emma Frost comment that really makes me think, I might share it with you. But for the most part, I'm not going to dig too deep into this. I'm going to wait to see what happens. That's what I want. I just want Jean Grey back, and I want an awesome story that's going to make that happen. And so far, it's not disappointing me. I'm enjoying it. And maybe that's because I'm switching my brain off at certain points and just going with it. And isn't that what we have to do sometimes? Hey, guys, you are now all caught up with Phoenix Resurrection.